Good afternoon, you beautiful lot. Hope you are well. Hope you can hear me as ever. Always prefer it if you tell me that you can hear me so I can crack on and not worry about that. Always feeling a bit naked when I've not got my little frame round. I've done a special one today because it's Mehab. We're going to be talking about such a Mehab theme. For those that don't know, that's a project that Joe Turner leads on, which is absolutely fantastic to partner with because it's sort of helping you to actually better yourself and to get over certain demons. It's a life coaching project that has obviously taken you lot by storm. You've clearly engaged with it, and so it's one of the things that we're now producing more content for. And I really wanted to sort of do a session on something that's doing loops in my house. I'm sure it will be yours as well, which is Encanto. I don't know if you've seen that yet, but if you haven't, then definitely worth a watch. And hopefully, this will give you some insights into some of the interesting characters that are within it, as well as what lessons can be learned from it for therapists. But that's what today's theme is in. Now, I noticed that the green hasn't really worked on the little edited Mehab logo thing, so I've got a few versions of it today, and so you'll be having to tolerate various different images. So this is Encanto. For those that don't know, really interesting sort of theme from Disney, an animation that they've done their latest hit. I mean, there is a new one out as well, which is I don't know if you've seen this Red Panda thing that I watched the other day. So that's an interesting one because there's something to be lifted from that as well. But that's hot off the press. Encanto has cut through in many ways because the songs have broken through, a bit like Let It Go did from Frozen, and so it's kind of a chart topper from that as well. So I think it's kind of a real mass cultural appeal, which has been interesting. But I wanted to tease out a few variables from it that are really helpful for understanding yourself, as well as reflecting on certain archetypes that you've fallen into, and to especially the factors such as obligations, especially when it comes to say your talents or your dispositions, how you end up getting drawn into stuff that you might otherwise prefer to not. And we've talked a lot about that through the Mehab project, and Joe Turner has schooled us all on that over time. And so I thought I'd throw my angling on this with regards to and in reference to Encanto. So these are your main characters in Encanto, and so if you are aware of the film, on the left hand side there you've got Louisa. We're going to be focusing in on her today, but there are probably, depending on how this goes, other episodes that we can do leading to describing and discussing some of these other characters. Some really interesting things on the macro. Really, this is a family with special powers who are obviously then assume a leadership position in this area, that they've magic area that they've managed to keep themselves and protect themselves from harm's way, which I think is relevant, right? So this balance of talents of this family keep them and their community away from danger. And therefore, there's a responsibility that comes with these powers, and how they balance and manage that is the subject of the film. So this will probably involve some spoilers, and so apologies if you haven't watched it yet, but I hope you come back to this when you do. So anyway, there's as I've just mentioned, Louisa, who's one of the sisters in Encanto. She's going to be my main focus of today's presentation, shall we say. So I've got some quotes of hers and some images, and I'm going to be just discussing and riffing my thoughts on it. Now, I am someone that, admittedly, when it comes to my background in, say, linguistics and stuff like that, and in journalism, I'm someone that really tends to err away from deep literature analysis, and I find that sometimes you can read more into something than is there, and that sometimes that ends up being a bit of a dark art, and that's my usual temperament. And I think that that's why in this instance I might be at risk of sort of torturing the same logic. Like I might be forcing an issue where it isn't. In this instance, I don't think it is. I'm pretty sure that this is what is one of the reasons why it's sort of taken off and why people can recognize themselves in it. There's some stuff that I'm taking that's a super low-hanging fruit, and there's other things that I think you might not have thought about. And so I hope it's useful, hope it's interesting, and do let me know as we go along. Of course, any questions, any comments, you're welcome to. It's a live show, but I know most of you listen after the fact, and so I'm looking forward to getting your feedback as this rolls on. So I want to start an awful lot of singing, and I'm not going to be singing in this. You'll be pleased to hear. But just to set the scene, the family acquires talents and gifts, as they're called, as they come of age. Really, so in their early years, they are given or acquire a talent, a gift, and Louisa is super strong. So she is. I mean, we're talking like she literally can move heaven and earth, like Atlas on her back type thing. So she is then symbolic, like physically strong, but the obvious metaphor they're using is that she is the strong one, therefore carries the loads of the family, and therefore in her tasks that she has to do for the community and for her family are lift this, carry this. You know, she has to assume that, and then it's quite clear in the film that that's something that she has to do metaphorically as well. Like she carries physical loads, but she also carries burdens, and that's quite an interesting balance. And that they sort of use that metaphor with her. Her sister is a really interesting contrast with regards to her beauty. So if you guys are interested, we'll definitely go there. But her sister has various obligations associated to perfection that is not dissimilar, right? But they have a slight angle to it whereby it's sort of aesthetic expectations and perfection. Whereas with Louisa, it's just to being the sort of strength, the rock of the family. Now, I thought it's only fair that we actually reference appropriately. And one of the reasons why I'm not playing clips and videos and stuff on this is because, especially through Facebook and to a lesser degree through YouTube, it can be difficult and it kind of gets flagged, you know, Disney copyright and stuff, especially whilst it's in the charts. And so I did a little bit of a trial run behind the scenes on Facebook. It started to get flagged. So I'm not going to be, be pleased I won't be singing, but I also won't be presenting clips and stuff like that. But I'm just going to put these quotes up. And I enjoyed referencing it appropriately. So yes, this is Louisa Madrigal in 2001 when the film was out. But there's various quotes that we're going to go through today. So at the start of what is a big song, a big solo act that she does, I'm the strong one. I'm not nervous. I'm as tough as the crust of the earth is. So she's always defining the fact. And then it's interesting that she's linking strength to lack of nerves, right? So there's something that in this point of the film, she's demonstrating that she's strong, she's not nervous, but also she's sort of performing and needing to enact and at this point trying to repress how she's actually feeling. So her sister gives her away. It gives her away because her eyes twitching, and basically she's trying to suppress and hold fire to sharing her own feelings and thoughts and actual concerns in this direction and nerves, but not being able to actually share that, and that's an important part of it. And then it follows on from that. But under the surface, I'm pretty sure I'm worthless if I can't be of service. So this is sort of the center of it for me, in that, especially in the early parts of her character that we understand, is that she considers her service and her ability to actually do things for people and for the community and for the family. She sees that as being her worth. And so immediate sort of lesson when we think about how this reflects on us as therapists, we take on a lot and we are giving, we are doing for on behalf of people, we're working with people, on people. And that is sometimes, it's easy to assume that is where you derive your self-worth, right? Your ability, your talent means that you can be of service to people, and it's true, but is that truly where you derive your self-worth? Of course, I'd argue not. And from if you studied anything that Joe's been putting out through Mehab, then I hope that it's landed that you realize that, of course, your self-worth is inherent. Now, if we think about where that comes from, and there's various different schools of thought, of course, on this, and we haven't got the time to get into the real depths of the philosophy on it, you'll be pleased to hear. But I think that we've got to try and understand that various different schools of thought, from sort of religious to secular, where your self-worth is inherent. You know, you don't need to necessarily be productive. You don't need to be in service to people in order to be worthful. Worthful? Is that a word? Worthwhile? Have self-worth. And so we know that that's something like it's in the US Constitution. It's sort of declared as human rights, and it's God given, and that religion then comes into that, of course, not just politically, but also just generally. That is something that you were made in the image of God. In that way, is something that means that then it's regardless of what you do, and that you always have that as a default, and that's sort of a basis of civilization. Really, is that you have that. But it's easy to lose touch with it when you become someone whose identity is so wound up in service that you therefore feel that that is the obligation, and that is where you derive your self-worth. And I think in this instance, Louisa can teach us a lot straight away from these first two lines. Just to reiterate, I'm the strong one. I'm not nervous. I'm as tough as the crust of the earth is. But under the surface, I'm pretty sure I'm worthless if I can't be of service. Of course, that's not true, but she's concerned about that. She's concerned that if she loses her gift and her talent, which is starting to wane at this point, she's worried that that then with it falls her worth. And further in that song, she says, under the surface, I hide my nerves and it worsens. I worry that something is going to hurt us. If you keep suppressing it, you keep suppressing your emotions, you keep allowing that to just be buried further and further, it will worsen, right? She's realized that if she keeps hiding from that, if she keeps performing, keeps putting a mask on, then it's only going to worsen, and it does. But then what is it she's worried about? She's not necessarily at this point worried that if I'm not strong, I'm going to be vulnerable myself personally. She's worried about others, right? She's always in service to others. I worry that something is going to hurt us. She is someone that metaphorically carries the burden for the family. She carries the burden for the community, and she's always helping out like that. And she's the strong one. So she worries that worry is beyond her. The worry is for others, and that is further weight on her shoulders, and it does definitely concern her. So later on in this song, I think probably maybe my favorite line, or one of them, is that this was what sort of gives you a clue that I think is absolutely classic for therapists, but also just for humans, which is that you do not necessarily have a direct link between your talents and abilities and the things that you might actually want to do all the time. Right, so that's a mistake that gets made when we notice in ourselves we can lose touch with it, but especially when we're thinking about others, is that we think, well, they love doing that, they won't mind. If they're particularly good at it and they're seen to particularly enjoy it, they're seen as inherent, right? If they're good at something, it means that if it were up to them, or they won't mind doing it all the time. And this is a classic one where, when singing this song, which again I won't sing, Louisa says the following. She says, if I could shake the crushing weight of expectations, would that free up some room up for joy or relaxation or simple pleasure, right? So if this expectation and to carry, to be strong, to oblige yourself in that way, would it free up some time for joy? So she's immediately saying that this is service. It's not enjoyment, right? Just because she can, just because that's where her incredible superpowers are, doesn't mean that that's where she doesn't enjoy it. She clearly enjoys serving others, but fundamentally the way in which she does that doesn't necessarily mean that that's where she gets joy. And then she's also saying, would it free up some time for joy or relaxation or simple pleasure? Right? At that point, she's just meaning like, could I just, if I could shake this for a bit of time, I would actually love to do the opposite, right? She'd love to kick her feet up. She'd love to just be otherwise distracted. She'd love to have some me time, but she's obliged to, both metaphorically and physically, and to deal with serving it. And just prior to this song, and when she goes off on this solo, is that she's then going through the village and being given task after task. And it's a little bit bossy, but it's also just what's been assumed. And she doesn't seem to mind. She sort of swaggers around. She's carrying all these donkeys. That's one of the things she's doing, but she's also sort of lifting buildings and all sorts of stuff that she's got to do to go and just serve the community. Is that this is important, that when as therapists, or even especially as therapists, because again, it's that service, that giving to others, that stuff, but also just as people, would we, oops, sorry. I think what we need to try and do is understand how, as people, And as therapists, especially, we do not get crushed by expectations that naturally will hide us away from, or think that we don't deserve, or we haven't earned some relaxation time. I think that's the most important thing, really. I think we need to really understand that we can do whatever we'd like in that direction, right? We can actually afford that time for ourselves, and in this instance, learning, I get a little bit from Louisa, that we can do what we like, and we can really find ways to weave that in to our world as well. Now, this is where I would say my favorite quote of hers from the film is something that she's realizing about what others are expecting of her and where those expectations are. Okay, and that is a concern that I think is really well balanced, in that she's putting a lot of this on herself. And it turns out latterly, spoiler alert, that is the case, is that when she doesn't manage to explain herself well, she's absolutely gets a lot of sympathy and empathy, and that people aren't then realizing their mistakes. But what they got into is that she was putting it on herself, but then also others around her were feeling this way too. And so this quote was a good one. She says, and she's obviously talking of others on this: "Give it to your sister and never wonder if the same pressure would have pulled you under." So that is something to think about with regards to not just what she puts on herself, but then this is where she feels, looking on, that the family will always assume, because she's so strong, again, physical metaphor, metaphor for her physical strength as to generally her mental strength, that people will be giving her things to do, knowing full well that it would absolutely squash them and pull them under. And that isn't fair, is it? Right? If you're just assuming that someone has a strength, you couldn't handle it, but you'll put it on someone else because they're strong and they can handle it because that's them. That is not a pleasant way to go about things. It's not a pleasant way to live. And so again, the thing to think about is that often patients can feel that way, and you can understand why. Is that's part of our role, is to hear that out. But if you allow that to land too far, like if you over empathize, in a sense, if you try to really put yourself in their shoes with the suffering that they're feeling, that is going to be something that does exhaust you. And that then when it comes to in teams or in families, if you're the person that's then seen, and you are a therapist by nature and by profession, means that then it's just going to be assumed. If you don't find a way to communicate that carefully, if you don't explain and manage to get that clear, that it is something that needs to be distributed more fairly, or that you're not assuming, that they shouldn't just assume that that's something that can be done without end, then unfortunately that's going to squash you. So in this instance, it's finding a way. The lesson, I would guess, is that you need to make sure that you recognize it in yourself, recognize if you're doing it to others, or recognize if others are doing it to you, and then communicate. You need to explain your needs for relaxation, explain your needs for joy, explain your needs for downtime, but also explain the levels and limits that you feel can sometimes be breached if people just assume you to be the strong one that then people can burden with their problems. And I think that's something that we need to definitely be monitoring and managing as best we can, because it's something that then we know that this is what loops back to self-worth. So again, follows the same quote. So give it to your sister and never wonder if the same pressure would have pulled you under. Who am I if I don't have what it takes? So again, she's associating that. If everyone needs to give her stuff, if she needs to carry heavy loads for the community, for her family, for herself, for just act of service, but who is she if she can't do that, right? If that's what's expected of her, if that's her talent, if that's her skill set, then that's the sort of thing that she then loops it back at the start, when I said about how really we need to, I'm pretty sure I'm worthless if I can't be of service. Who am I if I don't have what it takes? You've got these several quotes there, several comments where she's feeling like and misassociating her ability with her self-worth. and that's something that you definitely need to not reflect on yourself, right? What you do is different to what you're worth. Your productivity, your abilities, your skill in actually delivering care, your talents, be that is there in your family or a friendship group or whatever it might be, are not tethered to your worth, right? That's there as standard. You need to always have that baseline esteem ticking over is important. So who am I if I don't have what it takes? No cracks, no breaks, no mistakes, just pressure. And this is where it naturally intersects with her sister, which is interesting, right? No mistakes, the that they're aspiring to. She's the brawn to her sister's beauty. But it's very similar, intersecting. There are slight differences, and as I say, we can do a version on her sister as well of this if you're interested. But I think that recognizing yourself in some of this is that what it is a masquerade, to be perfect. Having people around you that inspire you to that and feel like they're assuming it, they feel that they're doing well is good, but performative nature these days of thinking that everything needs to be perfect and that things don't have sort of cracks and chinks in them, or that there's no mistakes that get made, it's just false. It's just crazy. And that's something that obviously Felicity talked about clinically on You Matter recently. Joe's spoken openly about mistakes that she's made, including with the fact that this stuff, when the whole process of holding the mirror up and serving yourself with improvement, with me and Joe have had on Chewing It Over, we've discussed the fact that, of course, that doesn't mean that we're nailing it and getting it right all the time. So what is it if not just a masquerade, a falsehood that then we can aspire to perfect, aspire to not making mistakes? And so that's something to bear in mind when maybe next watching Encanto, just to sort of listen carefully to some of this, especially from Louisa, but elsewhere in the film, there's plenty there to realize that, we needn't sort of tether ourselves to these stereotypes. They are psychological tricks. They're hangovers from evolution. They're, if you're more of a social constructivist, then things that we felt obliged to by cultural norms. And we need to sort of break free of them. Right? They're not useless, They sometimes can be helpful, but they need to be helpful in specific contexts. And then in other circumstances, they cannot allow it to then break you, burn you out. And as therapists, we're super guilty of that, right? Sometimes we're the strong ones. We can hear you out. We can feel your pain. We can try to solve this problem for you rather than with you. And that fixer mentality, of which there's other characters and healers, and there's other characters in Encanto that would be perfect for that, of course, which we can get into another time. Now, one of the things that I wanted to show you, I created a few graphics for this. So this is her and her sister, which we'll cover in another topic. But I particularly enjoyed this. Right, so this is Louisa with a donkey, looking pretty strong. And then because I've been feeling a bit of the pressure myself recently. I've had staff members off. And I've business is growing and things are interesting. But generally, you're always feeling obliged to be at your best. I think in this instance, if I hold a mirror up myself and where I've been a bit too Louisa recently, is that when people have, because it's something that's a strength of mine, or I've got a comfort and confidence to be able to sort of do pieces to camera and just get on and promote things, then sometimes to some degree, those are the donkeys that I'm carrying, and they're the things that others, admittedly, and often are saying that, like, I couldn't do this. I admire that you do it. Therefore, can you promote this? Because I don't feel like I want to or can do. I think that's something that I do take on. Now, I do enjoy it and I do love it, and that's something that is, relevant difference there, where I'm not saying that my talents aren't in line with what I enjoy, but it's just something that then too much of that can mean that I let other things slide, and I can overindulge, and also that does then eventually become tiring, and I do worry about that. And it's something that is my version of Louisa. And so when I saw this graphic, I couldn't help myself but to put myself in it. Look, here we go. It's like one of them things at the beach where you poke your head through. So I thought I'd see. Am I getting that right? Am I lining my neck up? Nowhere near as muscular. You see, that's the thing. So yeah, thought you'd enjoy that. just sent a screenshot to Charlotte, my wife, and she said that Louisa's beard's better than mine. So I'm of course mortally offended by that. But yeah, thought you'd enjoy that. I'm going to wrap up at that. Many thanks to those of you that are watching on, especially after the fact. I definitely want to try and understand how you guys are getting on at the moment in this really weird time. We have a obvious state of flux for the world, just as we thought we were climbing out of a crisis with COVID, which of course might rear its head again. But it's now kind of wartime, war footing. It's be that price of living concerns, but also the geopolitics of it being unstable can leave people on edge. And so we want to hear from you. We want to see how it might be that we can help and help you help yourself. And so please do get in touch. The most important service out there at this point in time, of course, and I would say this because I'm biased, but is Mehab. And so please do get in touch. Visit mehab.co.uk. I've just posted on the group on the chat. Sorry, how you can book a call with Joe Turner, or you can attend a webinar which is about getting or finding a way to communicate your own needs, in helping you realize that underlies your purpose and can drive towards that rather than it being the other way around. Your purpose doesn't then mean you derive and communicate your purpose. It's about making sure you're true to your needs and then realizing that will help you to achieve what you want to achieve and your goals. And so that's a perfect sort of opportunity for you to look to yourself, not consider that to be self-indulgent, not carry the weight of the world on your shoulders, because you matter. And that's something that, of course, I encourage you to go and look back over the back catalogue of the podcast, the webinars, access to physiomatters.com. You've also got a lot of Joe's back catalogue there from webinars and therapy live, etc. We've got much more to come on this. So my first sort of dabbling with Encanto. My favorite bit, of course, is this. I'm going to have to do more of these little things because now realizing that I can do it has made my day. So yeah, thank you so much. Have a great weekend. All right, love you lots, and do let me know if you want any more of the same. I will not be taking requests for any singing. That has been said on Twitter, and so no, I won't be breaking into song for Encanto, you'll be pleased to hear. But I definitely will be happy to cover other characters. Definitely up for you. Challenge me on some of this stuff as well. Have I overread it? Is this a literature analysis that's just a stretch too far and that I've just had something that I wanted to say and I've shaped it that way? Because, I'm not bothered if so. I definitely want to hear it out. But similarly, it doesn't really matter, does it? It doesn't matter if I've read too much into this, if it's the point I wanted to make. And certainly for you guys, I think no matter where, how you get there, comprehension that you're sometimes putting too much on yourself is, regardless of how you come to that conclusion, realizing it is the most important thing, and then seeking help and communicating your needs is the center of it. So do check out mehab.co.uk, book a call with Joe, or at the very least attend our next webinar because it's going to be brilliant. All right, take care. I'll see you later.